do 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 do. Wish I had the webcam of me slapping my hands like the shark signal. Anyway, the San Jose Sharks started off life in 1991 as an expansion team, the 22nd NHL team, in fact. But the San Jose Sharks history kind of intertwines with the California Golden Seals history in 1967, when the west coast of California got two NHL teams, LA for one, and San Jose for another one. We'll be talking about LA a little bit later on in the countdown. But anyway, the Sharks had a team in San Francisco, played in San Francisco at the Cow Palace where the Seals used to play, the Oakland Seals, or the California Golden Seals, whatever you want to call them. The Seals lasted 9 years before moving to Cleveland, and then that team got swallowed up by the Minnesota North Stars in a weird, strange merger, if you will, of teams. That usually never happens. Anyway, the San Jose Sharks came into League in 92, mostly because of the majority owners of the Minnesota North Stars, George and Gordon Gund, basically being upset over the fact that the North Stars were hemorrhaging money and wanted to sell their portions and move the North Stars to San Jose, because San Jose was going to have a great investment in it, and the silicon chip era was just about to start. However, the NHLers said no way. However, they did say that the Guns, if they can hold on and sell their shares to someone who wants the North Stars to stay in Minnesota, they can have an expansion team in San Jose. And that's what happened. The Guns got the team in San Jose, California, yay. And so basically, the Sharks were born. They had one of the most iconic jerseys of all time, even before they played a game. The Sharks were terrible to start off. Yeah, they got Pat Falloon, who was the Memorial Cup MVP and all that. But their second pick, Ray Whitney, would have a better NHL career than Falloon. The Sharks and North Stars actually worked out a deal that some Minnesota North Stars would be drafted onto the San Jose Sharks, like the prospects and all that. North Stars got to take part in the expansion draft to try to have their roster up to par, and so would the Sharks. Well, the Sharks would still be in the expansion draft, but they would love to get some Minnesota North Stars in their dispersal draft. Not much happens. The Sharks did pick up Doug Wilson and Kelly Kissel in off-season trades. And, of course, they weren't doing that well. But 93 took the cake. They lost 70 games, an NHL record that still stands to this day. Yeah, 70 out of 84. I know it's a little bit biased because it was 84 games, whereas the Capitals lost 67 games in 80. All that. But regardless, Sharks sucked. They didn't even get the number one pick. Ottawa cheated their way to getting the number one pick for Dag. However, of course, the Sharks would have the last laugh as Ottawa would stumble even further with Dag. The Sharks would also have the last laugh in 1994 when they shockingly got all the way to the number 8 spot in the Western Conference and clinched on the final week of the season to face the Detroit Red Wings. And everyone thought that the San Jose Sharks were going to be toast. Besides, it's the Detroit Red Wings who were finally getting back to respectability, especially after losing to the Leafs in Game 7 of the first round at home in overtime in 93. The Sharks played tough, and Game 7, Chris Osgood, the rookie, made a fatal mistake by trying to flip the puck out of the zone, and then it went to the Sharks, and Jamie Baker put the puck into the net. The Sharks win Game 7 in overtime and knocked Detroit out. The Sharks would even face number 2 because Calgary got knocked out on the same night, April 30th, 1994, by the Vancouver Canucks. So the next team up was the number 3 seed Toronto Maple Leafs. And the Sharks actually pulled a rabbit out of their hat. They were up 3-2 on the Leafs. Unfortunately, a weird NHL rule prevented Sharks from having an advantage because they said that in 94 and 95, if a Western Conference playoff had to deal with 2 teams from different divisions, Central and Pacific, because of the air travel and all that, compared to the Eastern Conference, which basically didn't really have that much problems with time zones and stuff like that. So they said that it would be 2-3-2, kind of like what the NBA Finals at that time was doing, other than 2-2-1-1-1. So the Sharks and Leafs played 2-3-2. Sharks won Game 5 at home. Trouble was, they had to play game 6 and 7 in Toronto. A fluke overtime goal by the Leafs made it a series. Game 7, the Sharks were flat. Goodbye, Sharks. Now, originally I was thinking about doing the 1994 Sharks as my what if, because I would have loved to see the 94 Sharks, pull one out of the hat, beat the Leafs, and then face the Canucks for the chance to face the Rangers in the Stanley Cup Finals. But there's a good reason why they're not. It's no hatred on the 94 team. It's a team decades later. So the Sharks in 95 did decent. Artur Zerbe recovered even though he got his hand bitten by his dog and had lots of stitches and all that. Urbe with the robotic outfits. Sharks somehow made it in. They got the 7th seed this time, and faced Calgary, the team that they could have faced in the second round of the 94 playoffs if Calgary had beaten Vancouver in Game 7. And it went to Game 7 in Calgary in overtime, not single overtime, double overtime, when Ray Whitney, see how valuable he was? He scores in double overtime, and the Sharks again won a Game 7 on the road in overtime against a team they should have got their asses handed. That would have handed them their asses. Sharks would take on the Detroit Red Wings. Unfortunately, the Red Wings did not want to be embarrassed for a second straight year and beat the Sharks for 24 goals in that 4-game series. Yikes. The Sharks were like off and on. They did good. They got Patrick Marleau, who was a decent player. The Sharks in 2000 actually made a big noise because they took on the number 1 seed St. Louis Blues, who won the President's Trophy that year. But sadly, the 2000 Blues were unprepared, especially with a shot from center ice that went off Roman Turret's head and into the net. In Game 7, I think it was, Sharks shocked the Blues in that thing. Now, I would love to say the 2000 Blues are the St. Louis thingy, but I decided to change it to something else. Anyway, regardless, the Sharks were known for pulling off magisterial playoff wins. In 2004, they were the cream of the crop. They actually shocked the Colorado Avalanche in the second round. Well, of course, the Avalanche were in the first season post-Waugh, because Waugh retired. And few can forget that Jonathan Cheechoo threw his legs goal against Abisher. That was amazing. The Sharks went to the conference finals where they took on the Calgary Flames, 2 teams that should not have been in the Stanley Cup semifinals. And sadly for San Jose Sharks, they lost Game 1 at home in overtime on Mother's Day, and then they lost the series in 6 in Calgary. The Sharks would continue to have good promise, but then they would falter at one of the last hurdles. I don't want to repeat a lot of their histories, but there's a lot of, if you look at urinary tree and legacy of failures, the Sharks are one of them. The Sharks just had been overrated. In 2017, they actually shocked the world by beating the St. Louis Blues in the Stanley Cup semifinals. Obviously, one of those 2 teams had to go to the finals to take on the Penguins. The Sharks got to the finals, but Pittsburgh took them out. The Sharks got a lucky break in 2019 in the first round against Vegas. They were down 3-1. They forced a Game 7 in San Jose, when all of a sudden a phantom 5-minute major penalty put Vegas shorthanded for 5 minutes, and the Sharks tied the game and won the game in overtime based on that call. That was one of the most phantom calls ever. But thankfully, the NHL made the rule that they will review any major or misconducts. So anyway, the Sharks got lucky, but in the second round they got bit because obviously karma bit them in the ass. So anyway, the team I'm doing is the 2014 San Jose Sharks for obvious reasons. If you remember, teams that have blown 3-0 series leads, of course, you talk about the 42 Red Wings, the 75 Penguins, the 2010 Bruins, and now you got the 2014 Sharks. The Sharks looked good against LA Kings. Johnny Quick had no answers for the Sharks. And all of a sudden, the Sharks just dilapidated. Patrick Marleau scored a key overtime goal in Game 3 of the first round series that made the Sharks go up 3-0. And then the Kings came back. Couple of wins. Okay, fine. Sharks got to win. They lose Game 6. Okay, Game 7 at home. They choked it. How the fuck can you choke it? I took it as a personal loss because I knew that I wanted the Sharks to win. But, funny as it sounds, The Sharks were between me and getting an El Perfecto 8-0 mark in the 2014 bracket challenge. I predicted every first round matchup perfectly, except for Sharks Kings. Heck, I even said Minnesota was going to somehow beat Colorado in Game 7. I didn't trust Colorado. I'm like, Minnesota probably could win Game 7 in overtime. Lo and behold, Nino Niederreiter made me a prophet. I know it's sacrilege, but that's the truth. So anyway, the Sharks blew a chance to face the Anaheim Ducks in another All-California matchup. So it's simple. The Sharks take on the Anaheim Ducks in the second round, and the winner of that matchup will face the Chicago Blackhawks, who were waiting for the winner of that team in the 2014 Western Conference Finals. So anyway, the East gets untouched as per normal. So basically, the New York Rangers will make the run to the finals. So the Sharks falter. But now we have a problem. Here's the problem, though. The Sharks took out the team that ended up winning the 2014 Stanley Cup. Because we'll say the Sharks win in Game 7. So the Sharks play the Ducks. The New York Rangers will play whoever gets in. At worst, it'll probably be a 2-game total goal series to decide who wins the Stanley Cup and all that. Because I don't feel good about not rewarding a Stanley Cup to somebody that didn't deserve it. So anyway, onwards. So the Sharks and the Ducks face each other. Now the funny thing is that the Ducks actually were the team that won in the Pacific Division. So the Sharks actually had fewer points than the Ducks. I thought it was the other way around. But anyway, Anthony Niemi will face Freddie Anderson. Now something to talk about is that the Ducks actually had to employ Hiller, Anderson, and Gibson as goalies in the 2014 season because of ineffectiveness. But I went with Freddie Anderson because that's how Bruce Boudreau used the rotation. So Anderson is in. If he falters, it'll be Hiller. If Hiller falters, it'll be Gibson. There's no way I'm going to put Alex Daylock in for the Sharks. Well, I did that wrong. There we go. Well, Game 1 went to the Duckies, 5-2. Pavelski scored for the Sharks. Maroon and Bolsheman made it 2-1. Ducks get 2 goals from Matty Perreault, who I liked very much. Matt Bolesky got tossed for the Ducks. That should have helped the Sharks, but it didn't. Getzlaf scored and made it 5-1. Joe Forden made it 5-2 for the Sharks, but no can do so. So Perreault, Winnick. Daniel Winnick. How? He had 2 assists, but he's not really a second star. It should have been Freddie Anderson. Honest to goodness. So Bolsheman made it the 3rd star. So the Sharks up 1-0 are down 1-0, and come back to win 2-1. Pavelski with 2 goals. Brian Allen for the Ducks. So at 2-1 for the Sharks. So the Sharks had Vlasic, Boya, Pavelski, Thornton, Marlowe, Braun, Demers, Couture, Hurtle, Wingles, Burns, Havlat, Nieto, Hannon, and Desjardins. Ducks, Lindholm, Lovejoy, Getzlaf, Perry, Benjamin Fowler, Allen, Vatanen, Peter Bolesky, Cugliano, Silverberg, Bonino, Maroon, Palmieri, Pelot, Solani, Winnick, Robert, Mr. Koivu, Pierre Holland. Pavelski, Niemi, Allen, the 3 stars of the game. Should have given Anderson another star. At 1-1, the Ducks decided to keep him in Anaheim. They decided to keep Anderson. They could have went with Hiller. And that move actually works. The Ducks win 3-1. Pavelski scored again for the for the Sharks. But unfortunately, Cugliano, Perreault, and Winnick made it 3-1 for the Ducks. So the Ducks have a 2-1 series lead. Anderson and Niemi. Anderson, Solani, Winnick. Actually, if the Ducks end up winning this series, I was going to say the Ducks will go to the Stanley Cup final. But I want them to face Chicago. So it's 2-1. Maybe I said too much. Well, I did. So, the Ducks. Pavelski scored again. He always scores the first goal of the game. He does it again. Allen scored for the Ducks. Ford made 2-1 and thinking the Sharks are going to tie this series. But somehow they give up 5 straight goals. Getzlaf, Perry, Vatanen, Getzlaf, Penner. Dustin Penner was still around. Why? So the Ducks actually are now 1 win away. The Sharks are in deep trouble. I guess they wasted too much effort trying to win Game 7 against the Kings. So Getzlaf, Perry, Penner are your 3 stars of the game. So the Ducks just have one more win. Freddie Anderson, you might as well go with the hot hand. And it did it. The Sharks lose this scenario, so bad luck for the Sharks. Pavelski scored the first goal of the game again. Wow, that's weird. Marlowe made it 2-0, then Getzlaf and Bonillo by the end of the first period. Cam Feller made it 3-2. Sharks had a two-man power play because Guglielmo and Holding and Perry were on the march. Joe Thornton scored, and then Brett Burns made it 4-3. It looked good. But with 4 minutes left, Corey Perry put it in 4-4, and then in overtime it was Kyle Palmieri from Lindholm and Bonino Soup. That's left Pavelski Perry. So the Sharks would not have done it. So now comes the question. The Ducks and the Blackhawks. I don't remember who had the better point total in those years. I'll have to take a gamble. Yeah, it was the Ducks. The Blackhawks won 46 games, but they lost 15 in overtime or a shootout. So Corey Crawford is obviously the number one guy against Freddie Anderson. So game one, the Blackhawks win 3-1 sharp. Ben Smith, Jonathan Toews for Chicago, Colin Palmieri for the Ducks. Ducks decided to stay alive, and they win in overtime, 2-1 on a goal by Silverberg at 1:27 from Guglielmo and Bolesky. Lovejoy and Kruger scored. So at 1-1, let's switch it up to Chicago. And it was another overtime winner this time for Chicago. Marian Hossa, the ageless one from Keefe and Toews, to make it 3-2. So they're up 2-1. And the Blackhawks won in overtime, 1-0. It took double overtime. Patty Sharp, man, what a game! 54 shots on goal from both teams. Wow. The Ducks had a lot of shots on goal in the first overtime. They couldn't do it. They're down 3-1. Jonas Hiller might as well come in to the game. They're like, we're fucked now, but we might as well go with Hiller. I don't think Anderson can save our butts. And it worked. The Ducks won in overtime, 3-2. Overtime goal by Ryan Getzlaf. So it's 3-2 series back to Chicago, obviously. Win another overtime game. God, that's like, what is it, 4 straight overtime games or 5 straight games? Blackhawks had a 3-0 lead. Hossa, Leddy, and Sharp. But the Ducks came up with 3 quick goals in 5 minutes. Fowler, Solani, Perry. Sharp made it 4-3. Ryan Getzlaf scored an empty net. Scored a 6-on-5 goal. So big goal for the Ducks. But in the end, Ben Smith scored in overtime. So the Blackhawks would take on the New York Rangers in the Stanley Cup Finals. Let's just get the Rangers in here. Crawford versus Lundqvist. The Chicago Blackhawks had more points because of their overtime stuff. So yeah, so the Hawks would have game 1. And the New York Rangers lost 5-0. Wow, that was quick. You see all the goals. So the Rangers lost game 1. Game 2 was another shutout. Toews, Hossa, Bickle. Corey Crawford throwing back-to-back shutouts against the 2014 Rangers. Yikes. And then in game 3, the Rangers finally score a goal. Derek Brassard breaks the slump. That was what, 156 minutes in the playoffs without scoring a goal for the Rangers. Martin St. Louis tied the game, but in overtime, Mark Stahl made it 3-2. So the Rangers ended up winning game 3. Good for them. And then they went in overtime again, 5-4. It was 3-1 Hawks. Stefan Callahan McDonough scored quickly. But in double overtime, Brady Richards made it 5-4, 2-2 series. I know my Ranger buddies will be happy that I've done the 2014 Rangers. And no, they're not the what if. Game 5 sees the Rangers win 2-1. Brian Bickle may have scored for the Hawks, but Rick Nash and good old Derek Brassard, the brass ring, made it 2-1. So the Hawks are in trouble. The Rangers could actually win the Stanley Cup without even giving a shit. No, Hawks won 3-1. Yikes. Hossa, Keefe, and Kane scored for the Hawks. Rick Nash. Wow, we have a game 7. We have a game 7 in Chicago, Rangers and Blackhawks. Maybe the Rangers might have got the Stanley Cup. Or the Blackhawks, Rangers, Blackhawks. Hey, overtime heroic Chicago. Oh no. Martin St. Louis made it 1-0 in the second period. But in the third period, the teams traded goals. Puri scored to make it 1-1 for the Hawks. Brassard made it 2-1. Tays and Kruger made it 3-2 with a minute and a half left. Zuccarello in overtime. 3-3. Overtime, Chris Versteeg, the guy who the Leafs wanted and all that, from Brandon Puri. So the Blackhawks win the Stanley Cup in 7 games in double overtime. Puri, Versteeg, Lundqvist. Man, the Rangers losing double overtime again. I'm sorry, Ranger fans. I'm really sorry. I didn't think this would be a big deal, but I guess it was a big deal. Everyone is forsaking me.